Hey everyone, we are now just one day away from the full release of the Cycle Frontier. Like many of you, I'm absolutely fired up to get back out there and playing the game, so can't wait for tomorrow. But today we got some really informative information from the team and how they are changing the maps and loot for the game. So changes that are going to have a pretty big impact on the overall experience. This information I'm going to go over with you today has been added to a previous dev diary that we did make a video on previously on the channel. You can check it out. I'll have a link to it in the description below. And when you go to that post, if you are going to go look at it, make sure you scroll all the way down to the bottom because you'll see where they've added a section called Map Changes. All right, let's dive into all the new information that we've got. First off, the devs talked about loot and creature tiers and the tier changes that we're going to see. So if you didn't know, on both Bright Sands and Crescent Falls, each zone within the map is assigned a tier, and with that tier grade determines the difficulty of the creatures and the value of the loot. Tier 1 being the easiest and least lucrative, while Tier 5 being extremely difficult and the best spot for high value loot. The devs gathered a lot of information during the closed beta and saw a lot of trends and tendencies of players. The big one is that endgame players, understandably, gravitated towards the high value loot areas, and the two best spots in the game were Jungle on Bright Sands and Starport Admin / Warehouse on Crescent Falls. Because traveling to Crescent Falls represented a higher risk, most endgame players just farmed jungle over and over again, myself included. With so many well-geared players queuing into Bright Sands, the so-called easy map, it was creating lots of difficulty for lower-geared players to survive and generally get things done. So with this in mind, the devs made some big changes to both maps to try and incentivize endgame players to queue Crescent Falls as their go-to map and alleviate some of the pressure that the lower-geared players were experiencing on Bright Sands. Let's take a look at the changes to the loot and the maps. First off, we got Bright Sands. So on the left-hand side, you're going to see what the map tier list looked like before, and on the right, after. So before, on the left, we've got Bright Sands showing the jungle in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, and it is that purple color is Tier 4, and the bright pink is Tier 5. So those two bright pink areas are Jungle Camp and the Crash Ship, which were a lot of autoloaders and great items in the game, portable labs, and things that people really coveted were found there. And a lot of high-end players were just pushing into this area because of how good the loot was. So now on the right-hand side, we have the after image, and you can see that everything that was Tier 4 is now Tier 3, and everything that was Tier 5 is now Tier 4. So you're still going to get some decent loot in the Crash Ship and Jungle Camp, but it is not going to be anywhere near what we were experiencing before. And not only that, with the tier changes also comes tier changes to the actual monsters that are in these areas as well. So when you see Tier 3, that means that the number of monsters and the chances for elites and or at all elites is going to be much lower. So keep that in mind. Jungle is now going to be nerfed in a loot department as well as a creature department. Much more easy to navigate for, lower geared players. Okay, now let's take a look at Crescent Falls. So this map, you can see again, before on the left, after on the right, has been buffed. So what was a lot of Tier 2 areas all throughout the middle is now Tier 3, and you can see that Tier 4 and Tier 5 now exists in the area of favela and nutrient farms processing down the bottom left-hand side of the map. You can also see that Starport Admin actually has been nerfed down to Tier 4, but Pinnacle Labs and Oasis in that area in the upper right-hand side remain Tier 5 areas. But I think making the entire map a Tier 3 loot pool is pretty significant. So I like the idea that we have here of having two major areas that you can go to on this map that are going to be highly lucrative in the loot department. So I was actually asking for this change on Bright Sands, but it looks like we got it here, and Bright Sands went in the opposite direction to kind of save new players. All right, let's take a look at some other things and kind of wrap this sucker up. So there is some other information here that the devs shared with us. We talked about the map changes, we talked about the loot tiers and the changes there, but there are also changes to the weapon crates and the spawns for these weapon crates. They have been mostly moved to behind locked doors, so we're no longer going to be able to knife run into the jungle and snag, 3 or 4 weapon crates to try and get a huge upgrade and then just dip out and kind of rinse and repeat that. So that is no longer going to be available. And we also see that I think this was actually part of the beta too, but they are confirming that loot behind locked doors and puzzle rooms are going to be one tier higher than the zone that they're actually in. I don't know, it didn't really quite feel that way because most of the puzzle rooms were in lower tier areas, but this is in fact confirmed. And here we go, them talking about the jungle and the nerf substantially. Focus crystal runs as well as jungle camp and crash ship are still viable, but less lucrative. We got a lower creature density, of course, and savage marauders will no longer spawn in Bright Sands and only in tier 5 zones. We'll see how this all plays out. Really curious to run through the jungle, see how it feels. Obviously with less creatures, it should be a lot easier. We'll see what the focus crystal situation looks like, how many nodes have been removed, that kind of thing. I know obviously the focus crystal runs were a huge go-to run for making money in this game, and we'll kind of see how it all plays out. One other thing that they did touch on that's not in this little recap right here is they did address a lot of the jump ups in the game. So there was a lot of ways to get around and outside of the map in all these really interesting places. Well, a lot of those have been taken away. And they've also created more avenues through Crescent Falls areas that had a lot of kind of choke points and areas where people were camping. So there's a lot more maneuverability on that map. And a lot of the jump ups on Bright Sands have been removed as well. So just throwing that out there as an additional to know. Bang, that is it. That is a lot to digest, but a lot of good information. Really, really excited for tomorrow and getting back out and dropping into Fortuna 3 and playing the cycle again. You know how much we love the game here on this channel. Let me know what you guys think about the map changes and the loot changes down below in the comments. I will see you all tomorrow. I stream regularly here on YouTube, so feel free to stop by and ask questions or just say hi. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.